Hi everyone, and welcome back to another board canoe game video. Today's video is dedicated to a gear guide, so let's go ahead and jump right into this. Now when it comes to this, make sure to check the description in order to enter the giveaway and all that stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's go ahead and jump into this. This is going to be the gear guide, and what I'm showcasing here are different types of rarities. Alright, so this is going to be neutral gear with the gray background. This is going to be SR gear with the purple background. This is going to be SSR gear with the yellow. When it comes to this, we're going to be referencing this document right here. This is going to be from the Arca Live gear guide, the original article. Just note that it's been updated May 21st, so it's relatively up to date. All right, thank you to the folks who created this and pretty much made everything. Honey Pig, you're absolutely amazing. Okay, now when it comes to the different rarities, it doesn't matter as much. The thing that you should really care about are the different tiers of gear. Just note that the higher the tier, the more basic stats you are going to have, and it's also recommended to have gear at +5 ideally. Anything above +5, like +6 through 10, it lacks efficiency and it's not really that necessary. So make sure to keep your gear on those particular areas. And then some items have one fixed, one changeable option, and then two changeable options. If you're wondering what does that all mean, let's go ahead and jump back. Let's go into Kyle's gear. So you can see here there's going to be a couple of different options. These are the two options, the ones that are scrolling down, right? We'll show that in the crafting menu, but just note that these are going to be fixed for the maze gear. But if we look at something else like the Dante's case, like the T5 gear, this is highly configurable and much more easier to get. Now when it comes to what is the best set for the different types of characters, whether they're support, DPS, defender, whatnot, right now our current best sets for attackers are going to be attack gear. So ideally stack 2 attack gear on your characters. If you can't do that, feel free to run the T6 maze gear, the best gear currently in the game. We'll talk about more why. If you're wondering what this is, I reached 100 loyalty because I put so much EXP on Kyle Wang. Alright, let's go ahead and jump into our supports. Now the thing is with Yang Harim, I'm not running optimal sets on her. I should not be running crit gear. I should honestly be running cooldown gear. Cooldown gear will show what that looks like, but you can also run HP defensive gear. That way these units can stay alive so that they can cast more of their buffs. The whole point of cooldown gear is so that they can essentially cast more buffs, but if they aren't alive, then what's the point of even running cooldown gear as well? So defensive HP gear is going to be the next best thing in order to keep your supports alive so they can cast their skills. All right, let's go ahead and jump right here into our defender, Irie Alfred, and it's pretty straightforward. This is the gear that technically Yang Harim should be wearing, which is a double or single HP set and then a single defensive set. This is going to keep her alive, and that's going to be ideal. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the workshop area. This is going to be how you can craft gear. Note, if you're wondering how do I get these T5 molds, I covered it in another video, but if you go into operations, you can actually get them from task 333. This is going to be the best stage to farm. Credits to the folks who actually showed this on the Discord. I think it was the unofficial Counterside Discord who showed it first, or is the Milk Gaming crew. But either or, thank you to Legion. He's also been one of the people who's been quintessential to my success. I have to give a huge shout out to the community because everyone's been really great about sharing the information when it comes to KR. But this is going to be a good place to also get gear in case you're wondering. It also naturally drops T4 gear that is also pretty decent, and it's going to be at the SR rarity as well and rare rarity. Now if you jump back, the next best place to technically farm gear is supply operations, and some would say this might be even better, but I feel like the Eternium to gear ratio and the stuff dropping really isn't worth it. But just note here that you can get this Alex gear as well. All right, so it's going to be pretty decent in case you don't want to farm task 333, but task 333, I think it doesn't drop as great gear, but the thing is it still drops mold, so it's not as bad. And not to mention task 333 has a better gold drop rate. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the workshop again. One of my biggest tips is always have this running, because this takes roughly 8 hours to complete. If you're wondering should you unlock these, honestly it's up to your personal preference. I just like to keep this going 24/7 if I can, or at least as much as possible, so there's T5 gear always pretty much grinding in the background. Okay, and when it comes to gear enhancements, we talked about it earlier. Up to enhancement 5 is going to be worth it. Anything above that really is unnecessary. You can do auto select right here, and as you can see we go up 10 attack, which that's not really that significant enough, and I don't feel like I'm going to be crazy on this gear because it's anti-supporter gear. That's not going to be the maze gear that I want to place on Kyle. This might go on a different character, but for now I definitely don't like this set, so I'm not going to be going all in on upgrades. All right, and then when it comes to gear tuning, there's a couple of different things. There's precision. Precision is going to increase the value. So for example, let's jump into to more of a chilled out item, an item that isn't like as grand wall when it comes to stats. You can see here, if I do precision, we're just going to do it, it's going to go to 100%. So now it has a higher crit rate. This isn't really worth it for lower end gear, but I just wanted to showcase what it does. It's going to be a min-maxy thing. Honestly, I recommend doing it on like T5, T6 gear. Don't do it on anything below T4. That way you can get the best bang for your buck when it comes to these tuning binaries, because they are very difficult to acquire, all that stuff. All right, so anti-damage ground is actually pretty good to keep on your DPS. So this, if you want to like upgrade it and you want to have like the best like maze gear currently, then this one's pretty worth it in my opinion, because it's anti-ground. Most units are anti-ground, especially in PvP and all places. Okay, so this is going to be the change options. This will allow you to change like what type of option it has. So option 2 being like this thing, the anti-sniper damage resistance. I cannot change option 1. All right, so I just want us to be aware of that. So I can change up to 1 option. This is where the limited option changes can pretty much take effect. I believe this green line or this purple line right here is going to be hard coded into the weapon. And then when it comes to the change set option, this is how we can view our cooldown gear. This is what it's going to be look like. Obviously you can tell that support should have the max limit breaks in order to wear cooldown gear, Yang Harim being the premier support in the game for pretty much forever. So make sure to wear that. Attack gear for your DPS, HP defense gear for supports, tanks, healers, all that stuff. At least until we get cooldown gear for our supports, they're going to be sticking on this HP defense side, because it'd be the next best thing to essentially have your skills up so that you can survive. All right, so as you guys know, the current best gear in the game, or if you didn't know already, is going to be within season, and it's going to be the seasonal gear. This is by far the best. If you're wondering, random options, so they're going to be like a plethora of different things. Just note that this is going to be like the counter set, the stuff that has like the little watch looking stuff, and then this stuff right here, this is going to be the mech based gear. So please be aware that if you buy these out, try to buy out the swords, the clock right here, and the little screw. That's going to be the counter set. If you want like the mech set, then you know, feel free to get these weapons. I believe, I think the scope is for the soldier and everything. All right, so please be aware that this goes into particular units. Yes, this is going to be the best gear in the game. Feel free, you can sort of check out like the raid gear, which is going to be right here. Just note that it's not really the best, and we'll cover why right now. All right, jumping back into the KR doc, giving you some advice where it's saying wear either a 2 option or a 4 option like set effect gear type. So this could be, you know, full like half and half attack gear, full cooldown gear, all that stuff. Changeable option, just note that ground attack up is going to be good, and cooldown is probably the most important changeable option that you can get. Cooldown can be effective for any unit, even defenders and tanks. Just note that usually DPS and supports have the most amount of like cooldown and all that stuff, so feel free to put it on them as well. Okay, normal gear, here's going to be the different sets where it's Dante, Alex, Bronze, Silver, Hamilton, HP evasion cooldown set, and takes MT slots. So this is what these pieces of gear can essentially have. There's the superconducting set, which is from the raid gear, which will provide HP evasion cooldown set. So that's going to be pretty good as well in case you want to go down the road of having more support based gear or possibly tank based gear. There's the Shadow Hall series, which is currently not in the game for us in C. That's going to be quote unquote one of the best gears when it comes to damage dealers. And then we already have like the maze set, the Gordius set, I don't think that's available yet, and the Hummingbird, I haven't seen that either. But just note that the maze set is going to be the absolute best set to wear in the entire game, and it's not going to get power corrupt anytime soon, at least until the Shadow Hall gear, which pretty much arrives a little bit later. Also note that this is going to be covering that there is character only equipment. I haven't unlocked any myself, so when it comes to this, just note that most of the character equipment is not worth it. If you're wondering how to get it, you go into operations, you go into counter case, I believe, and then once you get, for example, Kyle, well, Kyle isn't here, but if you were to get Han Sorim to like level 100, then you will unlock their gear. Just note that most of the gear really isn't worth it. Level 100 itself is not worth it because the amount of gold and resources it takes. It is up to you whether you want to do it. It's just really not worth it. Maybe you're trying to grind like life contracts, then I totally understand. All right, so right there, some more notes on the character equipment, and here's going to be like a breakdown on the way like you should wear your maze sets. So attack 2 commonly okay until spectral set comes out. Defense HP, that's going to be for tank. Evasion gear is going to be good for your strikers like Lee Yumin, Na Yubin. I don't think they're in the game yet. Feel free to put it on your Chifuyu Nanahara evasion gear because she's going to be a fantastic evasion tank, and I think the other one is going to be Estarossa. They're absolutely scary, or you can just put the straight up defense set on Estarossa. I believe that's going to be better for her areas and whatnot. All right, crit damage set obviously goes to Zhao because Zhao has like the 100% crit passive. He's going to be one of the stronger PvE units in the game. It's just hard to make Zhao a good PvP unit because usually the enemy team sort of rushes forward and your Zhao can't protect itself. Attack speed gear being good on Alex and Yuumi Na, so feel free to do that. And then Awakened Yuumi Na is also going to be pretty good with attack speed. This is going to be a while before we get any Awakened units. A bare minimum 4 weeks to a month before we actually get Awakened characters, and that's going to be like the fastest time frame. This is going to be the Spectral gear, and this is going to tell you what are the best sets. So let's go ahead and jump right here into the dealers. You can see it's going to say Spectral Bullet Chain is going to be absolutely amazing for them, which is essentially just attack plus hit combos, and then Chain is going to be attack plus crit. Just note that no one advises this gear in particular, Spectral Smite. That's not going to be a thing anywhere, mostly because I'm not sure why they don't like to build crit damage and attack. I think this is going to be the gear where like YDCB and Epic 7 fans like to run crit damage gear, but just note that this is going to be the recommended sets again, where tanks, HP defense, supports cooldown, and dealers essentially having either attack sets or attack plus cooldown sets. Either or works, but feel free to go with something attack. And then the recommended sub options for weapons is ground damage and cooldown. This is going to be for maze gear, which we currently have in the game. Armor is going to have ground damage resistance. That is going to be ideal, so you can essentially counteract the weapons with counter damage or ground damage. And then there's going to be the cooldown maze as well, and then accessories are ground damage and then cooldown, and that's going to be on your maze set. Feel free to change the options based off of the PvP meta. I feel like we're more in the striker meta where Chifuyu, Nanahara, and Estarossa are just wreaking havoc everywhere. Those two units are on the field and they're max upgraded. Strikers feel like are stronger than Rangers because strikers are the innate killers for Rangers. All right, Rangers can only kill defenders, and a lot of people don't really run defenders in PvP, so you can say we are in a striker meta right now. Okay, and then here are going to be like raids on like how to do a few things and support requests and all that stuff. We'll cover facilities management later, but just note that the raid gear really isn't worth it to farm. Maze gear is going to be the absolute best. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the workshop right here and cover the last few things, and that's going to be having gear always constantly flowing. Gear enhancements up to +5 is worth it, but really it's not really worth it because we don't have too much gear on us. Unless you're farming task 333 and you're getting a bunch of gear, feel free to upgrade these mace hands that you get from PvP, and we'll talk about whether it's worth it really quick. Gear tuning, this is kind of worth it, especially for the mace hands, especially if you have anti-ground damage. That's going to be a good thing to maximize as soon as possible. Let's jump into shop really quick and give you my thoughts on whether you should save or not for seasonal PvP. Maze gear is going to be the best, so you can either do more summons or you can be the best now and have gear. Really up to you. I feel like gear is just as great. Summons more RNG, but it's a lot more fun. Free to play, it's up to you. It's going to be hard to get all of the maze gear every single time. They do rotate and they're always going to have random options. Just note that the maze gear is going to be good for anyone who wants to play the game, whereas the black contracts and stuff, this is more RNG, and you're probably not going to get any usage of this at least for a month. So you're essentially hurting your progress for a month, whereas this is like instant satisfaction. Anyways, that is it for today's gear guide video. Hopefully you learned something. Cooldown gear being the most meta thing for supports, attack gear being the best thing for damage dealers, and tanks, they're just going to do tank thing. But anyways, if you made it this far in today's video, consider subscribing, dropping a like, leaving a comment, follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter. Once we hit 22,500 subs, we'll be doing another giveaway. We're doing the 20,000 giveaway currently ending this Friday. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.